Well, here we are again. Massive Happy New Year, folks, and a massive welcome to our subscribers, first-time viewers, and LinkedIn members to another one-off special, this time focusing on careers in offensive security with Adam Bateman, the co-founder and CEO of Push Security. Get my breath back, that was a big one. Adam has got over 16 years of experience as a security practitioner and was one of the longest standing members of MWR InfoSecurity, a globally recognized research-led consultancy headquartered right here in the UK. He joined them in the offensive security or red team and later established their defense practice, running attack detection, threat intel and incident response, where he worked with MWR's enterprise customer base and specialized in helping them to defend against state-sponsored attacks. But today, we're lucky to have Adam here, and he's going to be covering what it's like to be in a pen testing, ethical hacking or detection response role, what companies look for when recruiting people into early career security roles, and more importantly, how to impress them, and how the attackers have now adopted their tactics due to the shift to cloud and remote working, and why this provides a massive opportunity for newcomers like some of you out there to the industry to leave a mark and make a name for themselves. And as always, we'll be taking questions all the way through, and exciting news for the InfoSec Live community. Adam's also joining us straight after this live stream for an exclusive community Q&A. If you want to come and join us for that, let me find the right link. And if you're brave enough to scan my QR code, he chuckles in an evil, sinister tone, click there and that'll take you straight through to the community and you can join us for that chat later. But before we bring him on, and for those new to the channel, I'm your host, Simon Linstead, and by sharing stories and best practice over the last few months, it's led to over 153,000 views here on YouTube by you, our amazing now 8,200 subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And thanks to your support, it's also led to the launch of our in-person community-driven events in both the UK and US, with a focus on knowledge sharing, networking, and definitely no sales pitches. Another dodgy QR code for you here, if you're brave enough. If you want to check it out, we've got 24 events planned across the UK, US, and United Arab Emirates in 2024. Very exciting times with Austin, Texas kicking off. Got to dust my passport off for January the 25th. Invitations are open for that. So if anyone out there in the Austin area want to come along, please reach out, send me a DM. Happy to send you an invite across. But meanwhile, back in the community, we still have those study groups, mentor sessions, and regular networking meetings to help you raise your game in cybersecurity. Make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. QR code was up already for that. If you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed just buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a way you can show your appreciation here on YouTube with 3 tiers of membership, allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe, hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying it. And if you've got a question, we want to make these as interactive as possible, so make sure you drop them in the chat. Time for me to stop rambling on. Let's bring Adam on and crack on with the show. Just got to press a couple of buttons first and we should be there. Here we go.
Welcome. Hey man, I just realised
sat there like 20 minutes listening to me waffle on, so thank you for that.
We're exactly the same top as in the profile picture, which was completely unplanned.
I hadn't noticed that actually. Yeah. I'm glad you've pointed it out to everyone though, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So look, we spoke first time a couple of months ago now, I think. And for those that know me, they'll know that I desperately wanted to come into this industry as a red teamer or as an OffSec professional, which clearly didn't happen. So a little bit of envy there in a good way for Adam and what he's achieved in the industry. So I'm really, really excited to listen to your journey today and hopefully get some hints and tips for people. But I gave a little bit of background about yourself. Do you want to dig in a bit earlier than that and talk to me about your journey, your life journey, and what happened from school? Have you always loved this? Talk to me about you, Adam.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on. I think I mentioned to you before that I was really grateful very early in my career to have a couple of awesome mentors and people sort of show me the way. So yeah, I'm really passionate to see the industry succeed. So I'm really passionate about kind of giving back and paying it forward. So it's a good chance to be here. But yeah, I mean, I'll go back really early. I mean, as you said, I've been in the industry for 16 plus years professionally, but before that, it was much more of I'd say like a hobby side. So I think when I first got into it, I was, classic teenager learning how to hack things. But back then there just weren't new labs and there weren't like professional certifications and courses. So it was kind of just playing and trying to learn and tinker and just work out things on your own. So a lot of the stuff that we were doing is just, sitting on your computer, scanning the internet to see what was out there. I was like
Can I give you
reversing.
my theory on that quickly, on why as a society we're so crap at actually doing that now? And
Yeah, please go.
I look back to when we got our first Beta, I'm showing my age here, for our first Betamax video recorder back in the day. And it took like 3 days of reading the manual this thick and trying to work out how it worked before you could actually get it to record or play pretty much anything. I think it was 3 or 4 years later they introduced Video Plus, which is for those that are in the UK. I think you had it in the US as well. You entered a series of 5 or 6 numbers into your controller and it automatically set that program to record. I think from that point on, we as society have lost the ability to work out how things work, Adam.
It's good. It's a good like foundation of skill, isn't it? You've got to pull things apart. But yeah, I mean,
have you always pulled things apart or tried to fix things and break things when you were younger?
yeah, I was just like I was really intrigued about how the whole thing works. So I think it started for me. Like I came from I didn't come from a wealthy, or privileged background at all. Like in fact, I grew up in government-backed accommodation, like on benefits. A lot of my family is still there, so like we didn't have like all the big resources and everything else. But it was like, but we were just really interested. So actually, one of the first things that I did and was that we had like a kind of dial-up modem plan. You could only use it between six and
Yeah.
midnight or something like that.
Yeah, we also had the same.
Yeah, so it was one of the first things I was doing is like reverse engineering the ISP software and just trying to work out ways to hop over onto another plan and get unlimited access to the internet and just different things like that. And there are a bunch of things we did, like reverse engineering games to find sort of cheat codes for it. And there was actually a really cool thing where this is mad that they used to do this, but really early mobile phones used to store the top up like pay-as-you-go credit on the phone itself rather than on the network provider. Crazy design decision, right? But we kind of figured this out, and we could take the phone apart and like write a little hex code and then solder it into the phone. And then when you had you top it up with like some credit, and then when you run out, you could just turn the phone off, turn it back on again, it would top it back up. So it was just these kind of things where you were really interested, and you were like making sure it was victimless. It was always just sort of experiment with the technology. Yeah. It was never to sort of do anything unethical, but it was just
you never had any desire to be unethical with it then, Adam?
No, not at all. I think like it's I think it's like an intrigue about technology. That even the rules around the things then were really, really blurry. But I think it's a lot to do with intent. Like if you hack into a network and then you like ransomware everything, you're clearly like, that's not the right thing. But if you're kind of messing around with technology on your own, you bought your phone and you play with it, or you're downloading and buying your own license and then you're playing and reverse engineering the software, it was that kind of thing you needed to do. But yeah, I mean, as the industry progressed, I think what happened then was I was a hobbyist really for a long time in that way. And then it was when I went to uni in like I think 2024. In the UK, we have what they call a sandwich course. So the third year is a work placement. So you do a 4-year course, the third year is a work placement. And actually, as I was building up to the work placement, I found this course, which was actually a professional kind of hacking course, teaching people how to get to the industry. And I was like blown away by the fact that this probably the first of its kind. So I saved, like, bearing in mind I didn't come from a wealthy background, saved. I was building websites for people on the side to get onto this course. And I went to do the course, and the course was actually run by a ethical hacking, like pen testing firm. And I was on the course, and because of the background, because of the tinkering I've been doing, I must have kind of stood out in a course and did pretty well on the exam. So I asked them, like, hey, what do you think about a placement here? And they said, sure, we haven't done it before, but why not? So it was really, really good. And that was my break into the industry, where I then went to work for them for a bunch of time. And I had a couple of mentors. They're actually at CrowdStrike and Mandiant now, I believe, last time I saw, but they were just like really showed me the way. I was like a new grad in the industry. And that was when the pen testing career really took off for me. I had to go back to uni after that, at which point, I was loaded up with professional hacking skills. So
how did that go?
Yeah, it was all right. I had to like sort of resist hacking the uni network a lot, but I actually channeled my.
I take it you got good grades, Adam.
Well, I channeled I didn't do, honestly, in school, my grades were average. Like I wasn't, it was when I really found my passion for cybersecurity, things got better. And then I actually focused my dissertation specifically on building like a browser-based security technology, long story short. And I got really good grades for that because it was quite novel. And then I left uni and I didn't actually go back to that original company because of where it was located, it was up north. And I interviewed at a bunch of places, and it was pretty cool because there was at the time there were loads of different security consultancies there, but they were all kind of different. Some of them were, you were probably wearing a suit more often, kind of fancy offices. You probably got paid a bit more, but there was one that stood out for me, and that was MWR InfoSecurity. Really, really, really special company. I mean, that you walked in there and everyone was like, there was circuit boards everywhere. It was like, everyone was just like wearing hacking hoodies and jeans and t-shirt, and it was like they were proud to be what they called a research-led consultancy.
Yeah,
they gave everyone 25% of their time just to do whatever they liked, which these days a lot of people do that, but for a consultancy to do that is a really big deal.
Massive.
Yeah, because
it's billing hours, isn't it?
Exactly, you're selling time, right? So if you're like Google and you give 20% time, you're making money from ad revenue, and then you can give time and it doesn't impact your business. But for a consultancy, you're billing by the hour and you cap out on the amount of money you can make. So to give people everyone 25% of their time to really work and progress their own project was a really big deal, right? And it came through in the culture. So yeah, that company is just super special, like really, really smart people in the industry. Those people now have scattered off and they're at Apple. They founded their own companies. Like they're really special. Unfortunately, you can't find much about MWR online anymore because
I did look before you came on actually, and I couldn't find an awful lot.
No, and the reason is because we got acquired by F-Secure, which are now called WithSecure.
That's actually who I had my first and only junior pen test interview with, was F-Secure back in 2020.
Might have been with some of the MWR crew, but yeah, a lot of research still exists, but it's branded now under WithSecure.
Okay.
And so you can't find MWR, like the solid stuff that was done. But yeah, I mean, there was some really cool things we did. Like I can talk about through some of those stories. If that's interesting. So I mean, generally speaking, I think going into a consultancy is a really good way into the industry, and I think it's worth caveating here and saying, like, you shouldn't take anything I or anyone says for gospel, because this is my path through the industry, and there's multiple paths, and that couldn't be more, especially an offensive security role. Yeah. That's particularly important because the job description is finding your own path, right? It's like finding
two things that have stood out on what you said so far about your journey. One was the fact that you clearly demonstrated your ability when you were doing that course. But the second one, which is equally as important, is that you asked the question.
That's exactly, it's curiosity. Yeah. And that is what people look for when this role. Because bear in mind, like, you're trying to find, you've got really smart people setting up networks or building applications, sometimes major vendors creating software, and you're trying to find a way into that system that they haven't thought about. It's like you have to think outside the box. Like, that is the skill. Like, you're not going to read a book and then go off and get a job. It's about the intuition. And it's about that actual curiosity to go and kind of break and learn stuff. So once you build that up, you're set in offensive security. That's my number one thing. But yeah, there's multiple routes into the industry, and I always recommend people, like, you can hear my journey, but I think it's generally good to think about people, like, hear from people who've been through the whole journey and come out the other side, which is the category I'm in. And but then also talk to people who are just a little bit ahead of you, because they're going to know they did an interview 6 months ago.
They could save you a ton of time and a ton of mistakes.
Exactly, right? It's a really good thing to do. But yeah, anyway, so that company, I believe that going through offensive security and being a consultant is a really, really, really good way to start the industry. And the reason I think that is because if you go into an internal security role, you get really, really deep into that one company, but then you're deep in one company. Whereas if you go to a consultancy, you're working for, like, I was there for 12 years. I must work with like 200 companies. I saw everything, good, bad, security, like a whole range. And once you understand that attacker intuition, it's way easier to move to things like detection, because you understand how the attacks work, and you can be like a lot more proactive rather than reactive, right? You can think, how could this get hacked, and build solutions for that, rather than waiting for news to break and then responding to it, if you said to me. So I think it's a really good thing to do.
I want to come back to this later, because I can hear the thoughts of some people in the audience, with you saying consultancy is the way to get in. But how do they get those roles, right? That's the difficult bit. And we won't talk about that now, but for those watching, I just want you to know that we are going to come back and address some of these points and thoughts that are running through your head at the moment. Sorry, Adam.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to chat about. Do you want to chat about that in the Q&A or?
Yeah, well, I wanted you to talk through some of the things that you'd done from work, like we said before the show, and then I think at the end, one of the last topics we're going to talk about was around how the attackers have now shifted their tactics due
Yeah,
to the
sure.
change,
Yeah,
and
cool.
I think that probably gives us a good time to then look at how you can differentiate yourself, make yourself stand out, and opportunities for coming into the market. But what sort of things did they have you doing on, the first week or two when you joined the consultancy? Was it baptism of fire when it comes to drinking from the fire hose of knowledge, or what were you doing?
So actually the first project that I went on personally, and bear in mind I came from having some industry experience by then, was I actually got to hack an entire county, which was a really cool project. I always really enjoyed these because what they call breakout scenarios, and basically what I had to do was go and sit in a library in the UK and use one of the terminals that was just sitting there. And they're really locked down, really limited. It was like, sit at that and see what you can do. And I managed to get the library machine and then actually break out and get access to a browser, download some tools onto it, run them, get over the command shell, and then scan the network. And then once I scan the network, break into the border router, and then you could actually use that. And you could, I won't go give away, it's a long time ago, so I'm by now, but you could actually hop around. And I managed to get from there into like the kind of corporate council offices. And then from there, you could pivot down into all the different schools and libraries. And like we had full control of everything. That was a really cool. And then you get a bunch of, there's a big mix of kind of things. A lot of stuff you're doing is report writing. You get your fair share of good, normal AppSec, but there's some really, really cool projects that came out. But yeah, the consultancy in general, I think what happens is you have lots of like network pen testing, internal, external AppSec testing. You have sometimes very dedicated security research where you've got like reverse engineer software and stuff like that. Then there's the red team side, which is much more like targeted attacks. So you might have a very big brand and they say, look, here's a fixed sum of money and a fixed amount of time, and I want you to achieve those objectives. They're really awesome because you're like putting a team of 8 people together, and as a team we were able to do things like take control of the ATM machines and sort of move the mouse cursor over and get a picture of it to say you've done it and stuff like that. But I think set expectations, you're not going to get straight into that sort of role. Like you come in,
and that's exactly where I thought I could do a few years back.
Yeah, just
and I am open for hard hat and clipboard type roles if anyone ever needs anyone.
Yeah, it's definitely achievable. I think what happens is, generally speaking, you're coming into the industry, sort of, you're showing you've got that intuition. You're doing your kind of AppSec and internal infrastructure testing. You build up, and then the more senior, there's normally like a team of people inside the consultancy that specialize in red teaming, and they'll pull more juniors in to shadow over time, and eventually you can lead those engagements. But they're quite specialist inside it, but equally as fun. I mean, another job I did was one where I actually had to sit the UK driving tests exam. This was a really fun one. So basically they asked me to go into the exam hall. There was no one else there because obviously they didn't want to disrupt the exam. It's just me. But other than that, they wanted to keep it realistic. So I had to go and put my phone in the
Did they check your ears for earpieces? They did that to me on one of my exams.
Yeah, they actually do that because they said people used to have a Bluetooth headset and they were listening. So they make you put your phone in a locker.
That's right.
You haven't
got that Pearson View Centre by any chance?
I can't remember. But yeah, it was a cool thing. So I had to sit at the exam. They open the exam, but what happens? It opens as like a full screen window, so you can't get to anything behind it. And I'm trying to remember the details, but I think I just like held down shift and it pops up like a sticky keys prompt, which is like an accessibility feature. And there's like a little icon, you can click it, opens the print dialog. And then from there, you can browse the file system and fire open a command prompt and open in Explorer, download the tools. Anyway, long story short, we managed to kind of extract all the local admin password hashes out of the workstation.
Of the terminal itself? That
like
sitting the exam on?
Yeah, you can run tools and like pull the password hashes off the local account. But then what people often do, this is really common in organizations, is when they build those systems in the first place, they'll have one Windows build and then they'll just clone that across the others. There were like 20 workstations and they're exactly the same. So you could take the password hash and spray it across all the others and compromise all the others. And I've sort of proved that you could watch what people were, other answers that people were doing. So you could like copy someone else. And then I managed to sort of compromise the assessors workstation, which had the database of the answers in it and stuff like that. And he had to do this within the 45-minute time frame. So
how long did it take you?
I don't know, 15 minutes, something like that, I think. But I mean, I was pretty versed by this point, I think.
Yeah.
How long
had you been working in the role when you did that?
I've probably been in maybe 3 years or so into the industry, but it was really, really well locked down. Generally, that's not possible to do now, but this was a long, long time ago, which is why I can talk about it. So you don't get any ideas. Like that was the reason we sort of did that stuff. But it was really fun, yeah. And as a team, just to give you an idea of some of the other cool stuff we did. This wasn't me personally, but there was some researchers there who were just really, really awesome at kind of vulnerability, like exploit development. So did a lot of work for Google Project Zero, finding browsers in sort of browser exploits in browsers and everything else. One of the things that they did was particularly cool was they found a vulnerability in the chip and pin machines. So what you could do is write a card, and you could write some code onto it. So you could. The example was that you could go into, say, like Starbucks or wherever there's a high volume of traffic, put your card in, and it would take control of the chip and pin machine, and then you could just do anything you liked with it. So there's the scenario.
So you just clone everyone's details as they come in.
Exactly. So you turn it into a keylogger, and then you keylog everyone's details all day, and then you come back and put another card in, copy that information back off, which was just really, really cool. And there's actually, that wasn't me that did that. It was a guy called Nils, who's an awesome, really, really good security researcher. But there's actually there's a video from Black Hat of how they did that called Mission Impossible, which is like like if the MPOS terminals basically they were called at the time, which was really, really cool. So they were some of the things that we did that were a lot of fun.
Let me just see if I can find that Black Hat video.
I can drop you a link later otherwise.
Yeah, if you could, then I'll drop it in the chat later on for people to see. Do you mind if we just jump into some questions, because we've had so many in here? I feel like we should pick a few up. Let me move you to the top so you don't get cut in half by them as well. There we go. So Prashant first. Bit of background. Prashant's been in the industry for some time. Pretty technical, I think, Prashant, if I can make comments about you on the live stream. And also looking for work. So highly recommend him if anyone out there wants to have a chat. Prashant is open to work, and this is his question. Do companies that don't do some form of internal offensive security and get exposed deserve what they get? Love it, Prashant. You'll be very careful how you answer that, Adam, I feel.
Yeah. I need some
no
some training.
But they have to manage their own expectations from that, perhaps. We'll move on from that one, Prashant, because it's I think we know the answer, but we can't all say it out now. Here we go. Another one from Prashant. If you could build a pen test tool set on an OS of your choice, what would you do differently to the industry leading ones?
I mean, I was always really a big fan of the Linux toolset, but honestly, you're using both when you're pen testing. So like you're either using Linux with like a VM running Windows, or you're running Windows with a VM running Linux. There are different tools for different reasons. And it's interesting because I think Linux as an OS is the thing that's associated with hacking that everyone defaults to. Yeah. But actually, two of the best hackers I know live by Windows, and they'd stood out. We were like, "Wow, you have a Windows workstation?" It's like, "Yep," like completely. That's what they did, and they work really, really well. So you can
run the same tools on a Windows workstation as you can.
They vary slightly, but as I said, that's why you'd have a virtual machine or you'd have something slightly separate. But I honestly, I think it's like a what's better, iPhone or Android debate. Everyone's going to have a different view. You can decide, but there are some tools that are native to each OS that you would need to use. So you need to run both, but which one you run as your base build is kind of
Okay, you wouldn't use a MacBook, no?
Wow, I mean, I'm exclusively Mac now, so yeah, I would. But if you can get your consultancy to buy one of those versus a cheap.
I mentioned the MacBook because for all the pen test companies I've ever done consultancy for have all had MacBooks, so there must be a reason for that, right? Yeah. Next question from Annie. Good to see you, Annie. Would AI place more automation into entry-level roles in an attempt for financial cuts for the business, or is that more towards the blue team side rather than the offensive? And I think to sort of put some context around that, we see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn at the moment around the blue team side and it being automated away, a lot of the entry-level roles. What do you see in the the red team side, the offensive side for that?
I don't see AI automating out roles that specialist that soon. I see I think the quote that's been going around is don't worry, AI is not going to take your job, it's going to take your tasks. And I think that's where I see it at the moment. Like, it's progressing very, very quickly. It's very, very good. But like, the thing about pen testing that you'll learn is that actually a lot of the skill is getting it to work in the environment you're in. And that sounds kind of basic, but what I mean is, like, you go out in a lab and you test stuff, you're like OSCP, and you break stuff and it's all like designed to be broken. And then you get into the real world and it's like
Not
the
like
network's
that.
been configured in a certain way that you just didn't quite expect, and you've got to start using your intuition as well. And I just think
And
that,
it's not, and I think it's not just intuition, it's also this drives home the point that, and this is going to sound like me gatekeeping, but it isn't. This is just me from past experience, that there isn't an entry level role on this side of the industry, because you need to have, and when I say entry level role, I mean IT entry level role, because you need to have that foundational knowledge of networks. For example, what you just said, if things are set up incorrectly, if you don't understand all that, how are you going to know?
yeah, totally. And to be honest, AI is also introducing a new angle. Like, people are talking about how to sort of hack, prompt injection, for example, is something that's been happening recently. Like, applications, you input information into the app then puts that into a prompt and sends it off to AI, and you can like inject additional information into the prompt to say, hey, ignore what I just said and do this instead, and return other information and stuff like that. So I think it also provides an opportunity for security researchers to sort of break into a fairly new field and make a name for themselves.
That's quite exciting. And do you see a lot of people doing that?
I'm not, well, I mean, there's a bunch of research coming out on YouTube videos, but it's all pretty early, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe a good field for people to get into and start digging around in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be part of our future, but I'm reluctant to say that it's going to replace, jobs. I think like it's going to
jobs are going to change, right?
Yeah, like there's some great stuff. I mean, like a founder that I know has built some really cool technology for sort of basically simulating a tier 1 SOC analyst. And honestly, that's a good thing. So like, if you're a tier 1 SOC analyst, oh my goodness, like that means that my job's gone. But no, it means you're going to become a tier 2 SOC analyst quite quickly, which is great, because tier 1 SOC analysts like processing insane amounts of information and triaging. It's just totally unnecessary. So like, if you can use AI to really sort of go through and triage stuff much, much quicker, you can, what was a tier 2, a tier 1 becomes a tier 2 effectively, and then the job is a bit more fulfilling. So
more interesting and less of that.
Yeah.
Clicking. Yeah. Diamond, you've asked a question, and I can answer this to start with. I don't know if Adam's got any comments as well. I've got some CISO contacts and leadership contacts in California. If you want to send me a message in the LinkedIn community, I'm happy to link you up with some. Also, don't know whether the mentors have to be local, would be my other question that I posed to Adam. Do you think there's a case, and you said this earlier, about listening to lots of different people? And I think when it comes to having mentors, it's sometimes good to have more than one, perhaps. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you listen to different people from different backgrounds. Like I said, my view's been very much, I think offensive security working for consultants is a really, really good way to get into the industry. But yeah, other people have different views. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I can't pronounce your name, AX6YZYJ79GR. But the question is, what would make a potential candidate stand out to you? The ability to say the name would help.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really good question. So I can tell you a few stories with this. Is that I went from being a practitioner and doing hacking, and then I moved over to detection, did incident response, and then I became like a hiring manager and scaled a team of over 100 people. So I hired a lot of people quite quickly across both offensive and defensive roles. And so yeah, I can speak about this a lot. And actually, I think the thing that stands out on offensive security is what I was talking about. Is like, do they have that intuition? And so I think a lot of people come to the industry and be like, oh, I've got these certifications, and that's cool. Like, it's going to help, right? I'm not saying don't do them, but if everyone's coming in with those certifications, then
yeah,
you're just the same.
The package. You need a differentiator.
Yeah, and like honestly, there was a guy once that I interviewed who came into the room and he said, "Hey, look, this is the experience I've got, and these are the things I've done, and these are the certifications I've got." And I was like, "Look, this is great, but what have you done on your own?" And he was like, "Oh, I was working on this little project, but it is, I was reluctant to talk about that because I didn't succeed in it. I didn't like complete it. Tell me about it." And he was like, "Oh, I set up this lab at home and I used this open source tooling to sort of monitor the processes on the workstation. I started attacking it to see what the detection did. But, it was really hard because I got these false positives and I was trying to figure stuff out. And like, that's why I want a job here, because I can do this for real and learn from all of you." And I was like, it offered me a job there on the spot, which doesn't happen often, because I was like, "Yeah, man, the fact it doesn't matter. You're not expected as a junior person to have all the answers. The hope is that you have this killer instinct inside you and your drive to make that happen." Right? We had another situation where there's a guy who we famously had, who was a chef. Right? He had a bit of a technical background, but he wasn't technical. He's a chef. He came to the industry and he said, like, first interview, he said, "Look, I'm really passionate about this. I want to get involved." And we were like, "Look, it sounds like from this interview you don't have the experience that you need, but if you go off and get OSCP, we'll let you do this."
Was that me? Oh no, it was F-Secure who told me that a while back.
You a good chef.
And I wasn't a chef.
No, yeah. So he kind of went off and just learned and grind and passed the OSCP exam. I think we even helped him towards the costs at the time, and he got a job and he's still working there now, right? So I'm saying that I think the thing that we valued a lot when we were hiring people is, are you going to read books and then go off and repeat that? Because if so, you're not going to move the industry forwards. Or do you have this intuition? I'm good friends with quite a few people who work in the big consultancies. I actually told them I was coming on this and asked a friend who's been hiring a lot more recently. And I said, "What is it that, has anything changed? Do we still look for the same things as a candidate?" And he said the same thing, intuition. So the thing I often say to people is, we haven't solved cyber yet.
Yeah.
So doing more of the same isn't going to get us there.
It's the definition of insanity, in fact, according to Mr.
Right,
Einstein.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like, yes, you need to be smart. Yes, you need to be motivated. Yes, it's good if you have certifications, but those things are kind of table stakes. Yeah. Show passion, like show you're excited about it. Show what you've done on your own to go out and try to learn about the role. That's what I would say it stands out massively in this sort of role.
And make sure that passion comes across as well. Let me ask a question off the back of that. One thing you see a lot of in the industry is people moving around a lot. And from talking to a few consultancies, they struggle to retain staff once they've brought them in and trained them up. How do you retain staff is my question. Or do you just accept that it's a natural course of life that people are going to want to progress and bite your lip and get on with it?
I think like with really high performing teams, they need to always feel like they're learning. And so that's the key. Yeah. If you've got someone who's got this thirst for knowledge, like I was just talking about, you give them an environment where they can continue to learn. So what we did at MWR was this 25% time, because you would find that people would work on their own projects. And honestly, a lot of those projects turned into nothing, but the odd one was, pin pads, for example, just like new hacking tools, which came into the industry that were really, really good. So I think it's just making sure that it's not as much, people want to step up the ladder and progress, but that's people
they want to stay stimulated. They want to be stimulated.
Exactly. And they want to be mentally stimulated. Yeah, that's the main thing. But I think I stayed at MWR for.
Oh, where have I gone? Can you hear me?
Still here, yeah.
You can hear me. My camera's just decided to turn off. Hold on 1 second. Carry on talking. Carry on as normal. Everything's fine, everyone. It's okay. Let me just turn this camera on and off. So back to what you said really about the consultancy, what they were doing there, in the fact that you give people time off or give them the ability to learn and grow on their own as well, isn't it? I think my camera's just turned off. This is the problem. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Here we go. All right, hold on.
I think on the basis another angle to this question, what would make a potential candidate stand out to you? So I think the thread I was talking about there is your kind of soft skill and the passion that comes through. I would say though, there's an interesting opportunity. Like AI is potentially one, as we've spoken about, but the other thing is this whole move towards clouds and networkless, I guess.
Yeah.
And I talk about this quite passionately because, I told you my stories. I'm very, very network orientated as my world. That's the background we came from. When we started Push, it was a completely different challenge because Push security, we focus on basically identities in the cloud, i.e. user accounts that are being sprawled across the internet, because that's the new attack surface. And I think everybody in 2024 is saying it's like the year of identity-based attacks. It's like they're really trending up. It's a really, really big deal. And it's really kind of interesting because it's this whole new world that the industry hasn't really got to grips with yet, and they need to fast. And I actually have never seen in my career a bigger gap between reality and understanding. And I think that gap is an opportunity.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so what I mean by this is that what used to I think about the attack surface for a company in 3 chapters. First one was open ports on public IP address ranges. You port scan, try and pivot through the network.
Yeah.
Then it became all about endpoints, which it still very much is about those 2 things. But now the new one is these kind of identities in the cloud. And now the way we think about this is, imagine a company that starts today, like Push Security. We are laptops and SaaS applications with AWS workloads and nothing in between. Like, we have no network, right? Nothing. Like, no.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Exactly. So the best you have is, in fact, we don't even have an office, so we work from home. But even if you have an office, it's effectively a place to sit with internet access to get you to everything else. So how do you target a company like that? It's identities, and it's about the cloud. And so what you've started to now see is companies, new companies are like that, and they're saying, I had this just the other day, a good friend of mine who's a CISO at one of these fintech that's like that. It's like, I need to have a pen test done, but who do I go to? Because, I don't want someone to do an endpoint attack, because what they're going to do is they're going to compromise the endpoint and log back into my SaaS application. I know you can do that. Show me something new. Like, how do you pen test in this world? So we actually created a framework, which is on GitHub. It's just got over 700 stars now. It's called the SaaS Attacks Matrix. And it's an open.
Can you drop some links in for that as well? In fact, the 2 things that Adam's mentioned, if you could find them in between our transition from here at the end of the show to the exclusive Q&A for the community, if anyone wants to join, which is kicking off in 5 minutes, we can perhaps share those links in that session there, can't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a resource that we've put out that basically what we were doing is we were looking into cloud and SaaS native attacks and how these attacks will trend. And we were doing this to sort of inform our own research on our own product, but we thought, well, why don't we just do this on public and have other people contribute too? So it's a resource there for you to learn, it's a resource to contribute, and we're pushing out a lot of research in this kind of cloud networkless world. So if you follow us on social, you can see some of the stuff that's coming out, and like, hopefully, use it to inspire you, because honestly, I don't think that the current generation of security folks are thinking this way. They're so orientated around network-based attacks that this world is different right now. There's a famous, what we started to see in 2024 are groups really starting to adopt what they call cloud conscious threat actors, I think is what CrowdStrike calls them. But the most famous group is a group called Scattered Spider. And allegedly they're sort of, very capable 19 to 21 year olds. And it's kind of interesting because they've probably come into this world, and learn they're very, very good at moving across the cloud. And actually the time to attack and ransomware an entire company used to be days, and they're doing it in like 6 hours. And the reason they're doing this is because you're stealing like an IDP SSO identity and then using pre-written APIs to like just perform all the action, exfiltrate all the data. Yeah. And so I think that this is like a new area, which is, it's not like so new that it's like flying to the moon. It's the old concepts, but transferred into the clouds.
And where can people go to learn about that? Where would be a good starting place?
I think the SaaS Attacks Matrix is a good starting point, but there's some blogs coming off the back of that. Like my VP of research, really smart guy, Luke Jennings, who actually was at MWR as well. He was one of the guys who was like a really top pen tester there. He's with me now in Push Security, and he's the one who's running the Attacks Matrix. And we're writing a whole load of blogs. We've done loads of podcasts on this and everything else. But But like, yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity for other people. It's like an untapped area, and we're doing a lot with
That's
it.
interesting.
It inspires other people. I think there's an opportunity to come into a pen test company and say, hey, I've been looking into this new space, and actually be like, wow, I don't think we've done anything.
That's really interesting. I think I told you my 18-year-old who's doing an apprenticeship at Aviva, he's focusing on that for the same reason. He's 18 years old. In his head, that's how everyone should be doing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because you're like, it's if you're coming new into the industry, it's like, well, of course you're going to do attacks against this cloud world. It's like an attacker coming into the world now is like, they're not thinking about doing extracting password hashes and spraying them across clone devices. They're just like thinking about, how do I own AWS and how do I own an IP and everything else. So yeah, it's a super interesting word. It's a very deep topic, which I could talk about in a lot of depth separately, but I think check out some of our blogs, look at social media, and get the vibe of what we're talking about. And if anyone wants,
let's get those links in the session that we've got coming up. We've got 2 minutes left, and we've got about 5 questions here. So can I give you 20 seconds for each question? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Right, let's go. Here we go. Joe first. With people working from home more, is it possible / ethically possible to pen test at home setups? Is that back to the cloud question? Is it?
I think it's not that exciting, pen testing home networks. I mean, your own home network, when you understand what's going on, but I think like the complexity of a network is where the interest comes in. But yeah, I think like what's more interesting is people are sitting at home connecting out to, like at Push, we've got like 150 SaaS applications, right? And so working out, like, we're just using the internet. So how do you break directly into those SaaS applications, either via APIs or OAuth integrations or whatever? That's kind of where the interesting area is in this space.
That's awesome. And within the 20 seconds. Next question, which will be a quick one. If Simon wore a red jumper, would he become a red teamer or a belated, slightly fat and chubby version of Santa? I'll add those. Definitely Santa. Right. Okay. I've got the grey beard. I just haven't grown it out yet. We'll do that next year. Yeah. Jesse, I spoke to you about an hour ago. Great to see you here again. How else can candidates demonstrate intuition and passion on LinkedIn or their resumes? Because we've talked about how people can demonstrate that in a face-to-face meeting or an interview situation. But how can they get this across on LinkedIn or the resumes? That's a really good question, Jesse.
Yeah, a lot of candidates that stood out for us at the kind of CV stage had like a GitHub repo or their own blog, and they were just sort of writing their own stuff about their discoveries, and it was a really good thing to do. And like I said, like obviously, if you find this novel attack technique and write a tool which is really good for the industry, you're done. But not everyone's going to do that. But just showing that you've explored something, it's like, hey, I found this, I found this tool for Windows that worked really, really well. And I thought, hey, this would be really good for Linux as well. And so like, here's a script to allow you to do that. Or like sometimes people would just do stuff like, here's a really complex log parsing format. So I've written a parser in Python to sort of take that and dump the most important results out. And it like I said, it's much more about showing you've had a go at it rather than you doing something super groundbreaking, I'd say.
100%. We've got a couple of other questions through. We're not going to have time to answer these here. We are now going to jump off this stream though and jump into the community. So for Colby, I see you've just dropped one in, and Ali Funk, I've got a pretty good question that would be good to answer actually, but we're out of time. If you want to come and ask that question in the community, let me drop you the link in the chat here. If you join the free community, and the link for the live stream is on the events page, basically in the community, we'll be in there within the next 60 to 120 seconds. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. It's been really insightful. And I think for those, especially those looking to break into the industry, the last bit that you focused on is super interesting as to where the opportunities might lie. So I'm hoping I can get you to come back on here again. I think, in fact, I've connected with a couple of your colleagues on LinkedIn the last couple of days. So maybe we could return the favor and give you guys a push security special here on YouTube and get you all on at some point.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So everyone, thank you very, very much for taking the time to tune in. If you want to continue the Q&A, we are live in the community. We're going to be there in about 60 seconds. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. Again, Happy New Year. Going to play the outro. See you in the community in a minute. Cheers all.
Thank you.